You're watching NBC4, live from the area's leading news station. This is News 4 Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Viewpoint. The month of May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. And this morning on Viewpoint, we're going to focus on an organization called the Asian American Government Executives Network. It's called AAGEN for short. And joining us to conduct our discussion this morning is Mr. Tommy Wong, who is Chair of Mentoring and Outreach for AAGEN, and he's a member of the Executive Committee. Jim Men is Executive Director of AAGEN and a member of the Executive Committee. And Belle Leong Hong is a business owner, and she's a member of the Executive Board. Welcome, all of you, to Viewpoint. It's nice to have you with us this morning. Why don't you start off by telling us what AAGEN is and what it does?
Okay, great. The AAGEN is a vibrant professional network organization, and our purpose is to expand, to promote, and to support current, present, and future Asian American leaders at all levels of government. Our membership reaches into local, state, and federal government. And we are the senior Asian American leaders and decision makers across the government, and our membership is made up of the members in the civilian workforce, the military, the including the legislative and congressional members as well.
How large is the Asian American workforce?
Overall, if we look at national demographics, year 2008, Asian American and the Pacific Islander constitute about 5% of the entire U.S. population. And that same percentage carries into the federal government approximately 5.4%. And within the Defense Department, it's about 6%. And within the Navy, it's about 10%. But overall, if there are a total, say, 2 million federal workforce, and 6% of them, is Asian Pacific American.
So the work of AAGEN focuses primarily, though, on executives.
Yes.
Those at the executive levels of government. And how many are we talking about there?
We're talking about very, very small percentage. Just as a point of reference, when we first started this organization back in 1994, we had approximately less than, a little bit over 1%. So in the context of the legislative number of about 7,700 senior executives in federal government, the Asian American executives were only 100 of them. Today, we are a little bit under 2%. We are about 100, somewhere fluctuating between 120 to 140.
So there hasn't been much growth?
No, not in 15 years, if you think about it.
And tell us a little more about what inspired you then, and I assume numbers like that inspired you
yes.
to found this organization, and what your focus is.
Okay, so what inspired us is that we found that there were very few of us. We needed to get to know each other, and we needed to support each other. There are networks, there are women's networks, there are, generals networks, there are all sorts of networks. And we found that we needed one for, Asian Americans, executives in government. So that was one thing. Second thing was that because there were so few of us, we thought that we would be able to reach out and, get everybody together. So our focus today has evolved. Earlier on, it was more of a networking focus. Today, it is much more to try to help the younger generation of leaders in the Asian American federal workforce to rise to the ranks of the senior executives. And we do that by putting together programs that, help mentor them, that give them the executive skills necessary to reach the senior executives, and to give them access to a network of senior executives that are either currently in government or past executives like myself. I retired about 10 years ago, but I'm still a member of this organization.
You retired, but you
Yes.
haven't retired.
That's right.
All right. We've got to take a break.
Sure.
We're going to continue our discussion and talk about the glass ceiling, which you call the bamboo ceiling, as we continue to learn more about the work of AAGEN here on Viewpoint. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Viewpoint. We're talking this morning about AAGEN. That is the acronym for the Asian Pacific American, that is the acronym for the Asian American Government Executives Network. This is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, which is what I was about to say. Tommy Wong, you chair mentoring and outreach for AAGEN, but I wanted to talk a little more about the glass ceiling, the reason for AAGEN's existence. You call it the bamboo ceiling and the sticky floor.
Right. Well, we have a slightly different term for it because for the Asian Pacific Americans, there are slightly different factors involved in breaking the bamboo ceiling. Right now in the federal government, we're actually fairly well represented in terms of overall numbers. We're about 5% in the general population that are Asian Pacific Americans, and in the government, there's about a little bit more than 5%. However, when you look at the senior levels of government, the very top level, we're only about 2%. And if you look at the reasons why people tend to get to those levels, Asian Pacific Americans are usually very well educated, and we're usually in the job categories that are considered professional administrative in government that typically get to those levels. Yet when we get to the level right before the senior levels, our numbers are around 8%, but it drops off into the 2% when we get to the senior level. So there's a big barrier in crossing that bamboo ceiling, and that's the issue that we're tackling the most.
And again, your bamboo ceiling is the same as our glass ceiling.
Yes, it is.
One of the reasons I understand is the myth of the model minority. This is one of the challenges that you face. Explain what the myth is.
Okay. Well, the myth is that we are viewed, we're perceived as being very quiet. We don't make waves. We do our work without complaint, and most of us expect to be recognized by the work that we do without, saying, "Hey, look at me. This is what I've done." And so what happens is that we get passed over for promotions very easily. And sometimes those recognitions don't come that easily without, somebody noticing or somebody paying some attention to you. And so and there's a myth because that's not necessarily the case, right? There's also the myth that they're not going to complain if they don't get promoted, and so that's another another reason for being passed over.
Jim, how do you work? How does the organization work to try to overcome what really amounts to stereotyping?
Right. We analyze this issue. AAGEN has been supporting to many of the studies of this issue. Fundamentally, we boil it down to two aspects. One is our internally, sort of intrinsic Asian culture, like everything that Bill and Tommy has mentioned, that we do need to be aware of those facts and understand the perception that it may cause at the workplace. The second part is to make our management, the supervisors, more aware of this culture differences, because the Asian Americans tend to be considered lack of self-confidence or not interest in taking on management responsibilities. So given this understanding of the root causes of the barriers, we have put together a very aggressive program to deal with both the mentoring and the development of our workforce. At the same time, we also build a very strong, robust partnership with all the federal agencies to bring these culture differences to their awareness, to work together with them to change the perception.
How has diversity training affected your efforts? Because most companies have that now.
Yeah, they do. You know, it has helped some. It has helped some. I think that what the diversity training has done is to sensitize management to the fact that each of us have differences, and and in respecting those differences, they need to, you know, take that into consideration as they do their planning for advancement, for career advancements for the employees.
Tommy?
Well, part of the contribution of AAGEN is being at the table. So recently, OPM, for instance, has put together a workforce to develop a diversity strategic plan for all the government. And AAGEN had members at the table to try to help develop that plan. We also had discussions with Kirana Huja at the White House for the White House Initiative on Asian American Pacific Islanders to help shape that program. So part of where AAGEN is coming in is being at the table and help define some of these programs and trying to change some of the differences and make the awareness of the cultural differences.
All right, we've got to take a break.
Okay.
But we'll be right back to continue our talk. Stay with us.